Welcome back, everybody. This is chapter 20.4. Don't forget to smash like and subscribe. If I get 10,000 likes, everyone gets an A. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, this is about light and nutrient availability on their effects on net primary productivity. And we talked about these things way back in the day, so this again should kind of continue to be a bit of a review for you, hopefully. So why is light a primary limiting factor in aquatic organisms or aquatic ecosystems? And hopefully you guys remember the answer to that question before we even start. You should hopefully know is that just light does not penetrate very deep into water. Okay, after you get past a couple of meters, light's not going very much further past that. How does the compensation depth relate to net primary productivity? And we're going to talk about what compensation depth means. And why is there variation in nutrient limitation on net primary productivity? And spoiler alert, the answer to that question is that there's variation amongst ecosystems. So light decreases exponentially as you get deeper, which is what that sentence there means. Photosynthetically active radiation, or PAR, declines exponentially with water depth. So the deeper and deeper you go, the less and less light you have. Net primary productivity of phytoplankton is highest with lots of light. Okay, so the higher you are in the water column, the more photosynthesis you can think of it as you're going to have. The higher you are in the water column, the more photosynthesis you're going to have. But as you get deeper and deeper, respiration does not decrease. So just because you aren't getting a lot of light doesn't mean that you need less energy or anything like that. So as you decrease depth, photosynthesis declines, but respiration does not decline. Okay? When photosynthesis is equal to respiration, or as it says here, gross primary productivity is equal to R, your net primary productivity is 0. So when photosynthesis is equivalent to respiration, that is what is called the compensation depth. Okay? When photosynthesis is equal to respiration, remember these are like the opposite processes of each other. So as soon as you get to the point where plants are using the energy just as fast as they can make it, that is called the compensation depth. The reason that that is important is because nutrients in deeper waters in the oceans have to be transported to surface waters where photosynthetically active radiation can support photosynthesis. So if you're below the compensation depth, you're not going to be able to photosynthesize. Okay, so there's only this tiny band on the very surface of the water where photosynthesis can take place. And so nutrients, especially nitrogen, phosphorus, and iron, can be a major limiting factor for net primary productivity. All right, so the only place you can really do net primary productivity easily is on the surface of the water because of that compensation depth. And you basically need nutrients to get cycled up to you in order for photosynthesis to happen, in order for net primary productivity to happen. So what they did is they did some science with this. They took exactly in the same way that we did, and they added nutrients to certain organisms, and they examined the phytoplankton growing there. So nitrogen was the most important stimulant for phytoplankton growth. So the thing that was needed most by phytoplankton was nitrogen, followed by iron. And phosphorus didn't do a lot. But the thing with that is those are just averages, and there are actually huge differences amongst habitats, or among habitats. Okay, so even though phosphorus didn't necessarily stimulate growth on average, it really depended on what kind of habitat you were looking at. Was it polluted? Was it not polluted? So this is nitrogen here, and you can see the change in growth rate is about 0.2. This is iron here, and the change in growth rate is about 0.18. I don't remember what the exact numbers are. And this is phosphorus, and it's about 0, okay? So what this chart is saying is that when they added nitrogen to a particular ecosystem, and this is what I was expecting to see in our experiment if we had been able to let it run out, we were going to see increases in growth in those regions where we added high concentrations of nutrients. So it shows the next figure that we're about to see shows the role of environmental constraints on primary productivity in oceans. And as we have pretty much just answered, the question that you should be asking yourself is, why are shallow waters and coastal environments of oceans the most productive? And so you can see here these coastal regions are definitely the most productive regions here, all along these coasts. Okay, this is where most of our net primary productivity is taking place. And the reason for that is basically nutrient runoff from land, and because they're shallow enough for photosynthesis to take place. I assume this is a very common shipping channel, and this is probably just due to pollutants from ships. The reason this is slightly more productive here. So shallow waters allow for greater transport of nutrients from bottom sediments to surface waters assisted by wave action and tides. Coastal waters receive nutrients from terrestrial ecosystems as streams and rivers flow from land into the ocean. And the water is shallower too, obviously, so more light can easily get to those reasons, but to those areas. But the principal reason is that it's easy for nutrients to get to them. Constraints on net primary productivity in freshwater ecosystem. It's the same thing. It is light and it's nutrient availability. So solar radiation limits net primary productivity in lakes. Nutrient availability and net primary productivity in lake ecosystems has also been studied. And as you increase phosphorus, you're going to increase your net primary productivity. So if you want a little bit of extra credit, send me a picture of your pet. If you don't have a pet, draw a pet that you might like to have. Even if you do have a pet and you don't feel like taking a picture of it, draw that, send it to me. I'll hook you up with some extra credit. The phytoplankton net primary productivity is correlated with total phosphorus concentration. And you can see that, if I move my, get rid of that thing, you can see that as total phosphorus increases, chlorophyll also increases. And they're using chlorophyll as sort of an analog for net primary productivity or photosynthesis. So in streams, their net primary productivity is limited by light and nutrients, just like every other ecosystem. Light and nutrients changed in experimental stream channels that they created, or they probably didn't create the stream channels, they just experimented on them. Light availability limited production during the summer, and nutrient availability limited production during the fall. So the reason that light productivity or light availability was lower is because they have lots of canopy cover. The trees are all filled in during the summer, and then nutrients were limiting in the winter. There's less things dying there, and the canopies are less covering. So let's take a look at a graph of that. The top one is summer, I believe. The bottom one is fall. They don't look super different to me, like they made some claims about it in the textbook, and I'm sure it's just because I don't fully understand what they're doing. But what's happening here is in ambient light, this is the amount of net primary productivity, which they're using the analog of ash-free dry mass, which is just a sciencey term. They basically just weighed everything. Here they have added light, but they have left the nutrients the same. Here they've added nutrients and they've left the lights the same. Here they have added nutrients and they have added light. And you can see that there's a lot more stuff growing when you add nutrients and you add light. Again, how they differentiated between winter and fall and which one looked better with more nutrients, I'm not really sure, but there you have it. So the next section, or the next chapter, is 20.5. External inputs of organic carbon can be important to aquatic ecosystems.